My name is Amelia and I'm 49. I've worked for many years as an office clerk at a local factory. Until recently, I live with my husband Theodore, my mother-in-law Harriet, and our only daughter Kyrie in my husband's family home. We were married for 28 years. It feels like such a long time to me, but just a few days ago, I put an end to that marriage. Yes, I got a divorce. It's what they call a late life divorce. Some people were shocked while others just said it was inevitable. My married life began when I met my husband at the age of 20. Back then, I'd just graduated from commercial high school in our town and started my job as an accounting clerk at the same factory where I still work. My father's friend introduced me to Theodore.
He's a young relative of ours. How about meeting him? He works at the city hall.
My mom said, "A government job? That's a great opportunity for you. Please meet him." She was all for it. At our first meeting, Theodore seemed very earnest and a bit nervous.
"Nice to meet you. I'm Theodore."
He didn't talk much, maybe because he was nervous. "What do you do at the city hall? Any hobbies?" He answered all my questions politely.
"I work at the citizens counter in the city hall. I love fishing, and I often go to the mountains with my friends during my days off."
It felt like I was interviewing him. But I thought such an earnest guy would make a good family man. Eventually, Theodore was the one who asked me out. Throughout our dating period, he remained quiet, but slowly began sharing more about his love for fishing. I thought he was opening up to me bit by bit, and a year later, we got married. Since he was an only child, I moved into his family home after our wedding. I didn't know much about my mother-in-law as we didn't meet often during our courtship. I thought she might be as earnest as Theodore, but boy, was I wrong. She was a handful. The day I entered their house, she said to me directly, "Now that you're married, serve me and Theodore properly. Don't you dare talk back." Her sudden arrogance took me by surprise, but all I could reply was, I hope we get along well." My life changed drastically the next day. Woken up at 4 a.m., I cleaned the house and prepared breakfast in Theodore's lunchbox. I wasn't allowed to sit and eat. Harriet instructed me to eat standing in the kitchen, and of course, I was the one to clean up afterward. What surprised me more was Harriet helping Theodore get ready in the morning. She woke him up, brought him warm water to wash his face, and even laid out the clothes for him to wear. She'd smile contently when she saw him dressed in the clothes she chose, and he looked as if it was the most normal thing in the world. The last straw for me was seeing her put on his shoes for him as he left for work. I never thought I'd have to deal with such extremes, but my mother-in-law, with clear hostility, told me, "I'll take care of my son, you stay away." My husband seemed to expect his mother to be overly involved and never even thanked her. I wondered, don't you appreciate what your mom does? But more shockingly was her behavior. I realized our future wasn't going to be easy. Moreover, my husband barely paid attention to me. Sure, he had a demanding job, but on weekends, he always prioritized his hobbies. "How about we go shopping together once in a while?" Even when I suggested, he would reply,
"I'd rather go fishing. You can go alone."
"I want to spend time with you."
"There's no need for that."
That's how he dismissed me. The only times he'd join me were for events like relatives' weddings or funerals. One day I asked him, "Why did you marry me?" He said,
"Family was pressuring me since I was getting older. Finding someone on my own was a hassle, and you were introduced at the right time, so I just married you."
Shocked, I asked, "Didn't you love me?"
"I neither loved nor disliked you."
His words shattered me, and I broke down crying. And my troubles were far from over. My mother-in-law cherished her son, but was very harsh on me. "You're just not cut out to be a good wife." That was her go-to phrase. Once I came home late from work and quickly made dinner. She exclaimed, "Don't serve this half-baked meal to my son," and tossed it straight into the trash. Every meal had some issue, too salty or not salty enough. She'd only let me pack freshly made food in my husband's lunch. Any pre-made dishes, tossed out. She'd find faults in my cleaning or laundry too. She'd ask me to polish the entrance floor daily. After polishing, she'd step on it with muddy shoes and complain it was still dirty. When I did laundry, she'd comment, "This softener smells bad, rewash it," and have me redo it. But that wasn't the worst of it, because it fits only in the home. The real trouble was that she lied. It's hypocrisy. She'd tell our neighbors and relatives all sorts of made-up stories about me, how I neglected housework, mistreat her son, and bully her daily. She'd narrate these lies as if they were the truth, even shedding tears for effect. "My daughter-in-law is..." So everyone believed her. "You should be more considerate of your mother-in-law."
"She did raise your husband, after all."
How many times was I lectured by neighbors and relatives? I considered divorce, but then I got pregnant. Maybe once the baby's here, he'll change. Even if he doesn't care about me, he'll adore our child. Maybe the baby will bridge the gap between me and my mother-in-law. At least that's what I hoped, but I was wrong. Both of them wanted a boy. They were there at the hospital when I gave birth, but when they heard the baby's gender, they didn't even look at the baby's face. What, a girl? I still remember my husband's words like it was just yesterday. Even my mother-in-law lamented, "Not a girl." Her face fell, sighing deeply. We named our daughter Kyrie, a name I came up with. The two of them had only thought of boy names. My husband had always dreamt of taking his son fishing, and my mother-in-law longed for a grandson who looked just like him, so they hardly paid any attention to our daughter. But I believed that over time they would come to adore her as feelings grew. While my husband did fulfill his responsibilities as a father by providing for Kyrie's education and attending important events, he did so out of social obligation, not genuine affection. He wasn't abusive, but their relationship lacked warmth. My mother-in-law was no different. As Kyrie grew older, she distanced herself from both of them. I often thought of divorcing him, but he did provide the basic necessities as a father. I felt that having a father figure might be beneficial if something happened in the future that I couldn't handle alone. And his income was higher than mine. Raising Kyrie would need money. With that in mind, I couldn't easily decide to divorce him. By the time Kyrie reached high school, she seemed to understand my predicament, saying, "You can divorce Dad. I can get a part-time job." But even if I divorced, my parents were gone, and going back to my brother's house would just be a burden. Every day, I juggled house chores, work, and taking care of Kyrie. But the year Kyrie became a working adult, an event put an end to our life's monotony. It all began with my mother-in-law's hospitalization. On a cold winter day, during her usual morning walk, she slipped on an icy path. Unable to move, a newspaper delivery person found her and called an ambulance. Both my husband and I took time off work and rushed to the hospital. The doctor informed us, "Given her age, her bones and muscles have weakened. Even if she recovers, she might not regain full mobility." To which my husband replied indifferently, "Oh, okay," adding, "Please tell my wife the rest," shirking responsibility. He didn't even visit her. Instead, he indulged in his favorite pastime, fishing. After work, I visited her daily, bringing laundry and attending to her needs. Yet she complained to the nurse, "My daughter-in-law is so inconsiderate." I was complaining to a nurse who was in charge. The nurses trying to comfort her said, "She visits every day. You're lucky to have such a caring daughter-in-law." But my mother-in-law continued, "She only pretends to be good. She's always been so cruel to me." Moreover, she blamed me for her son's absence, exclaiming, "It's because of the nonsense you've filled his head with that he doesn't visit. What a horrid daughter-in-law." "That's how you insulted me?" I couldn't tell her the truth about his fishing, so I just mumbled, "He's been really busy." True to the doctor's predictions, her fracture healed slowly. There was an outbreak of a severe flu in the city, and even the hospital started showing signs of its spread. During this time, she contracted the flu and developed a high fever. Despite her condition, my husband remained indifferent. "I can't believe you," I exclaimed. "Your own mother is in a dangerous situation, and you want to go fishing? Show some concern for her." But my husband replied, "I told you, I'm leaving it up to you." And he didn't change his mind about going fishing. I felt a deep disdain for him, and after all the love and care he received from his mother, how could he be so cold-hearted? Then an event occurred that made me lose all patience with him. One weekend morning, as he was preparing to go fishing again, I stopped him. "You're visiting your mother in the hospital today. She's always taken such good care of you. At least show her your face." I confronted him at the entrance, trying to prevent him from leaving, but with a look of deep annoyance, he said, "All those things she did for me, she did them on her own. I never asked for any of it." I was left speechless. I couldn't believe what he had just said. He glanced at my shocked expression and said, "My fishing buddies are waiting. I won't be back until the day after tomorrow." With that, he left. Our daughter, who had witnessed everything, said, "Dad's so heartless." She muttered this with clear disdain. That night, I received a call from the hospital saying that my mother-in-law was in critical condition. I rushed over immediately. She had been moved to the ICU and was wearing an oxygen mask. Apparently, she had developed pneumonia, the doctor told me. "Tonight might be crucial." Of course, I tried to contact my husband immediately, but he ignored my texts and calls and didn't respond to my emails. I was disgusted with him. Why should I have to run around for a woman who had always been treated so poorly by her own son? Why should I be the one by her side during her last moments? Shouldn't her own son, my husband, be the one doing this? After all, she had never done anything for me. Even knowing that his mother was critically ill, he prioritized his own fun. Why should I exhaust myself for these people? I'd had enough. These thoughts crossed my mind. "I see, then I'll be leaving." "Huh?" I told the doctor, who looked at me in surprise. It's better if her son is here. I'm going home. I left the hospital in a hurry. When I got home, my worried daughter was waiting. How is she? She asked. It seems she might pass away tonight, but honestly, I don't want to be the one taking care of her, so I came back, I replied. She nodded, asking, What will we do next? We're going to get divorced. You're old enough now. That sounds good. I've been thinking of living alone. I've always been worried about you. Thank you. The next morning, we left our home early. It might be uncomfortable, but we decided to go back to my childhood home. When we arrived and told my brother and his wife what happened, they were furious that I hadn't said anything sooner. A few days later, I had a flood of missed calls and text messages from my husband. I ignored them all, but eventually reached out.
What the hell are you doing?
Well,
you left when you knew my mother was critical. Because of you, I had to rush back from my trip.
You should have. She's your mother, after all. It's your responsibility.
I expected you to take care of her.
I never said I understood. And after all the care she received, don't you think it's time to give back a little? I spoke with a sharp tone. My husband fell silent, but I pressed on. So, how's your mother doing now?
She's stable, but she's weak, and they said she won't be able to move like before.
So, are we putting her in a care facility?
That's gonna cost a lot. Why don't you just take care of her?
I won't.
Excuse me?
My husband sounded puzzled by my response. I said I won't. I don't want to be with someone who's indifferent when others are in need, and I certainly don't want to care for a mother-in-law who constantly belittles and lies about me.
So, what? You're saying you want a divorce?
Yes, I do. Even Kyrie agrees with me.
She's okay with abandoning her grandmother and father?
Excuse me? You've always been indifferent to Kyrie. Now you're saying she's the one abandoning? Don't be ridiculous. My husband fell silent again, but quickly retorted,
But you're just a clerk at a small-town factory, right? How will you manage without me?
He mocked my job, using finances as leverage. Oh, I'll be fine. I earn as much as you do.
You're lying.
I'm not. How long do you think I've been at that company? I'm in a senior management position and soon I'll be on the board. Plus, Kyrie's working now. I've always worked at that factory since graduating, juggling household chores and raising Kyrie. There were times I wanted to quit because of the physical strain, but I couldn't afford to lose the income. I worked hard with that mindset. Over the years, the company grew from a small-town factory to one of the largest in the region, and I climbed the ranks to a senior position. Now I'm able to take a seat on the board. But it's no surprise my indifferent husband didn't know. All he cared about was fishing. I've made up my mind to divorce you. From now on, let's communicate through our lawyers.
Hold on, we're married, aren't we? Let's talk this out.
I won't wait. The situation made it clear to me how self-centered you are. Goodbye. Ignoring my husband's pleas, I hung up the phone. After that, I proceeded with the divorce through my lawyer. He initially resisted, saying, A divorce would look bad. We have my mother's care to think about. But I was adamant. Eventually, he reluctantly signed the divorce papers. Of course, I made sure to get a fair share of the compensation and assets. My ex-husband ended up taking care of his mother at home. He wanted to place her in a care facility, but she insisted on being cared for by her son, so he had no choice but to provide home care. However, given his history of indifference, it's no surprise he struggled with the demands of caregiving. Their relationship deteriorated with constant arguments. I heard they fight every day. Just the other day, as I passed their house, I heard them shouting at each other. A neighbor mentioned, with a wry smile, that their arguments often last till late at night. My daughter Kyrie started living on her own, and I rented an apartment near my workplace. The apartment allows pets, so I recently got a turtle. Watching its leisurely pace makes me feel like the hectic pace of my life has slowed down. I want to spend time for myself now and live each day with enthusiasm.